Shalum. Shalum and welcome. Welcome to White Rose family. My name is Symmanayah, and these are the words I'm compelled to present before an awakening set-apart nation. Yashar'al, commonly known as Israel, or to some, Yisrael. And I'm speaking of a set-apart people, chosen by the Almighty Father Yahuah, not a geographic location. This is part of the Judgment Warnings and Instructions series, my brothers and sisters. And as you can see by the title, if you're looking at the slide, I want to bring your attention to the words fresh water, food, and slavery. Listen carefully, Yashar'al. For in the coming days, these three items, I should say two items, and the other is not an item, but a condition. Fresh water and food and slavery. Yes, slavery, my brothers and sisters. But before I get into this, before I present the warnings and instructions regarding fresh water and food and slavery, let me read the following. Warning and disclaimer. The information contained in White Rose family represent instructions and warnings to individuals who believe they are drawn by the Almighty Creator Yahuah to Yahusha Mashyach. The content presented centers around end-time realities. Please be advised this site is not intended for children under 16 years of age due to its content that is to be compliant with the media platform that I use. By continuing forward, you agree to hold Symmanayah harmless of any influence and or actions that arise as a result of watching, listening, and reviewing the content presented. The views expressed do not reflect the owners, management, and or shareholders of this media platform. Please note, I am not affiliated with anyone or organization with similar names. With that said, my brothers and sisters, I will present the case that describe the conditions that are unfolding before our very eyes. While some of us may be asleep, some of us just might not be informed. But know this, the one world government, the individual that is known as the beast or the anti-Messiah, it is my belief until the final exodus occurs, this individual will not assume their full position. We are the restraint that is mentioned in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. We are that restraint. Between now and the elevation of this anti-Messiah and false prophet, we will witness that the world government will come to the point where they are the ones who control the food and water from all natural and practical perspectives. Yes, we serve an Almighty One. Make no mistake, O Yashar'al, when it speaks of judgment beginning at the house of Yahuah first, the things we see unfolding right now, I've seen people trying to rebuke it, calling it the devil, and all types of things. I'm talking about famine, pestilence, and disease. Know this, O Yashar'al, it is written that the Almighty Father will discipline those whom he loves. Who among us is able to discern the mechanisms, the processes in which we are refined and disciplined by the Almighty Father? Who among us is able to discern that the things that are unfolding before our very eyes during end times are to make us weak, physically, mentally, emotionally, such that we yield to the inward man that is connected with Yahusha Mashyach and become strong, that we become strengthened in our weakness, O Yashar'al. Believe it or not, there is much to cover regarding fresh water, food, and slavery. Let's press on, O Yashar'al. Regarding water, consider these words, my brothers and sisters. Amos chapter 4, verse 6 to 8. And I also gave you cleanness of teeth in all your cities and lack of bread in all your places, but you did not turn back to me, declares Yahuah. And I also withheld rain from you 3 new moons before the harvest. Then I would send rain on one city, and on another city I would not send rain. One part was rained upon. Where it did not rain, the part would dry up. The 2 or 3 cities would wander to another city to drink water. But they were not satisfied. But you did not turn back to me, declares Yahuwah. My brothers and sisters, with scripture there is the literal, pertaining to a time years ago, and there are prophecies that pertain to the times that we are watching unfold before our very eyes. Look around. Famine and food shortages is a result of a lack of water. Now I'm going to speak on some of the narratives that man is trying to push out in a little bit. But mainly what I want you to understand this, O Yashar'al. If you had a choice between bread or water, choose water. Water is also symbolic of the word of the Almighty Father. Choose water, my brothers and sisters. Yes, it is written that Yahusha is the bread of life. But remember, the bread of life is the word of Yahuwah manifest in the flesh, sacrificed and risen. It is the name in which the Father, the Almighty Yahuwah, sent his set-apart spirit in Yahusha's name, as it is written. Amos 4:12 and 13 say, therefore I am doing this to you, O Yashar'al, because I do this to you, prepare to meet your Almighty One, O Yashar'al. Notice he's saying, I'm doing this to you. He's speaking to us, O Yashar'al. This is part of our discipline. To the unbeliever, to the person that is in the outer court, to the person that is not considered a part of the family of set-apart Yashar'al. They have their appointed time. Make no mistake. He goes on to say in the 13th verse, for look, he who forms mountains and creates the wind, and who declares to man what his thought is, and makes the morning darkness, and who treads the high places of the earth. Yahuwah, the Almighty One of hosts, is his name. My brothers and sisters, we will witness the fruit of our negligence to the waterways that we were gifted with by the Almighty Father. Fresh water is becoming scarce as we overpollute the waterways. Fresh water, my brothers and sisters, is something that will indeed, as it becomes more and more scarce or too polluted. Man can desalinate the oceans, but they cannot eradicate. They cannot remove the radiation that pollutes the waves, the water waves, and in some cases, some rivers. My brothers and sisters, let's examine these words. You shall begin to hear of fightings and reports of fighting. See that you are not troubled, for these have to take place, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and reign against reign, and there shall be scarcities of food, and deadly diseases and earthquakes in places, and all these are the beginning of pain. Yashar'al. My brothers and sisters, as things ramp up, they will get worse before they get better. I want you to take a moment, my brothers and sisters. I want you to pause just for a moment. And consider your position regarding slavery, my brothers and sisters. What do you think about the word slavery? For many of us who are of Hebrew, Abraham descent, first-hand knowledge of slavery brings about anger, bitterness, fury, to say the least, sadness, depression, among other things. My brothers and sisters, it is important for us to recognize that during these end times, we will find ourselves either a slave to Yahuwah or a slave to the wicked one. Come with me, my brothers and sisters. let me share with you something that I believe is of grave importance. You see, during end times, desperate people sometimes make poor slaves. Consider the words in Genesis 47 chapter, verse 18 through 21. Genesis 47 chapter, verse 18 through 21. And when that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, we do not hide from my master that our silver is all spent, and my master also have the livestock we own. There has not been left any before my master, but our bodies and our lands. This is a time of great famine. But Joseph had the storehouse. Joseph had a position, a strong position. And here we see his brothers and other Israelites faced with nothing left but their bodies and their land. And this is what they said. Hear these words. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us in our land for bread, and let us in our land be servants of Pharaoh, and give us seed, and let us live and not die, and let the land not lie waste. And Joseph bought the entire land of Mitzrayim for Pharaoh, because every man of the Mitzrayites sowed his field, because the scarcity of food was severe upon them, and the land came to be Pharaoh's. And as the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of Mitzrayim to the other. Now, some of you may argue and say, this is just talking about the Egyptians, the Mitzrayim. I think not. Search the scriptures, study them. They will bear witness. My point in bringing this out, of Yashar'al, is letting you know that as we see people fall into the category of being unemployed, as we see one another lose finances and the things that we need to sustain ourselves as we know it in our prospective countries, soon and very soon, my brothers and sisters, because we are making a mockery of the judgment of the Almighty Father, because we are not seeking to discern what he is saying to us, through us, one towards another, and directly and in spirit, we will face more severe times. It will come to the point, my brothers and sisters, where many will take the position to want to sell themselves to the world leader. Many among us will come to the point where out of desperation, it would be so tempting to sell ourselves. But make no mistake, it is written that the Almighty Father will indeed discipline his children. Remember, O Yashar'al, remember the life in this. This is something, I'm getting ready to read something that some of us have read more than once or heard people talk about it, but it's time to look at the realities of what can happen. Never forget the following, my brothers and sisters. For desperate times and betrayal have begun and will ramp up. Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 to 39 said, do not think I've come to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I've come to bring division, a man against his father, daughter against a mother, daughter-in-law against a mother-in-law. And a man's enemies are those of his own household. He who loves father, mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take up his stake and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who has found his life shall lose it, and he that has lost his life for my sake shall find it. Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, it's easy to read a passage. It's easy to talk about scripture. But now it's the time to look at the realities of what's unfolding before us. Many of us, O Yashar'al, we will face hardship. But this is what I'm saying to you, Yashar'al. It's time to begin to examine the one in the mirror, examine one another. It's time to yield to the vetting process so that we can identify those who are sincerely seeking to worship and obey the Almighty Father, and those who desire to yield to his living instructions. Believe end times will prove that there will be a sifting among set-apart Yashar'al. This is a process where judgment that begins at the house of Yahuah will bring about the ills, the mistakes, the wicked things, the things we have fallen and stumbled on, the things that are causing strongholds among us. And that judgment, as it is brought out, those who seek to do the will of the Almighty Father, those who are exercised by his discipline, we will fall under the blood of the Lamb and yield to reproof and correction. We will seek forgiveness, and we will rise up in the strength and power and might of his set-apart spirit, stirring and working within us. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, it is the desperation for food and water. It's coming, O Yashar'al. It's coming. Now we see those who are awake and informed probably have recognized that there have been major meat manufacturers, one who mostly produce pork, but produce other meats, and people don't know that. And there are other meat processors that produce beef and poultry that are starting to close or cut back their facilities. We have seen a narrative where farmers are destroying crops, and they producing a narrative saying it's not a shortage of food. We just don't have the logistics to get it to the food pantries or to get it to the people that are hungry and starving. If it doesn't reach the person that is designed to reach, if it doesn't feed the hungry, it represents famine. So it's a contradiction to say, well, it's not a food shortage because we have it, but we're destroying it. If they're destroying it, it didn't get to the people's mouths. Yashar'al, the time is now to identify the conflicting and confusing rhetoric that is being spun to us, to recognize the contradictions that are before us, O Yashar'al. Let us not be shocked. Let us start examining one another, and we may just be able to identify those who would betray us for a morsel of bread, or a glass of water, or a bottle of water. There's a sifting that's coming, O Yashar'al. It will come with strength and power of set-apartness. There will be pain. There will be regret. There will be anger. We will learn to manage our emotions. We will learn the importance of why the scriptures tell us to focus forward and keep our eyelids straight. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al. It is said by the news that in 2 or 3 weeks, a lot of the meat manufacturers, we will begin to see the grocery shelves empty out. Some have already begun to empty out. So if you are one who eat meat, clean meat, know that hardship is ahead. Notice, O Yashar'al, these are things that will bring our earthen vessels to our knees and cry out, Abba, Father, Abba, Yahuah, in the name of Yahusha, direct my footsteps. What should we be doing? We should be preparing as we are sheltered in place right now, but preparing for soon and very soon chosen leaders of Yahuah, messengers, commonly known as to many as angels, will become visible. Soon and very soon, there will be chosen leaders that will be used by the Almighty Father to blaze the trail for the gathering of the four corners of the earth, for the final exodus. They will direct and serve as guides by the Almighty Father and lead those who are being called to fulfill the final exodus. There will be those who will rise, who will lead those to the place where they will spend their final days before physical death, to echo the power and might of the Almighty Father, to let those know that the reign of Yahuah is at hand. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of work to be done. Ask questions. Seek to discern what must and will come to be. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, a sifting have begun. As people become desperate, it shows their true self, as it is said. We will see the things that have been hidden. My brothers and sisters, a sifting is coming. Not a maybe, not a might. Consider what must and will be fulfilled. Consider Amos 9, 8 and 9. Amos chapter 9, verse 8 and 9. Look, the eyes of Master Yahuah are on the sinful reign, and I shall destroy it from the face of the earth, except I do not completely destroy the house of Yaakov, declares Yahuah. For look, I am commanding, and I shall sift the house of Yashar'al among all the nations as one sift with a sieve, yet not a grain falls to the ground. My brothers and sisters, the emergence of the mark of the beast is near. Believe it or not, it's closer than we realize. That sifting that is mentioned is a function, is a process. That sifting will be us vetting, examining one another, putting one another to the test to prove whether we are indeed a child of the Almighty Father Yahuah, whether we are indeed one who have been saved by the power and might of the Almighty Father through Yahusha Mashyach. That sifting will come to be those who will gird up with the strength to fulfill final day orders. My brothers and sisters, Yashar'al, end times are here. Beware of manipulating words and rhetoric and stories. Beware of how people are spending more time talking about other religions than they are about preparations for what we are to do. You see, the preparation of vetting and examining one another and asking questions, it will bring us to a point where then we must decide, is this the person or are these the individuals I want to remain in fellowship with? Is this the community I want to stay in, or should I leave? Is this the fellowship, the camp, the group, the family I want to be around? Make no mistake, O Yashar'al, those who have been chosen to fulfill the final exodus, those who will be martyrs for Yahusha's name, those who will deliver final messages from the Almighty Father, will do so. Not a if, not a maybe. The Almighty Father will fulfill all that He promised, including three major things that you hear me speak of: discipline, vengeance, and wrath. People are spending more time talking about the other religions, this, the other religions, that. What about the details of what we're supposed to be in preparation of? What about the details pertaining to drawing closer to one another, getting to know one another, drawing tight and close to one another? That requires work, prayer, obedience to the Spirit, understanding His word as it is made alive before us. There are a lot of manipulators. I ask you, O Yashar'al, during such a time as this that's emerging, are we really satisfied with the mores, pastors, prophets, teachers, community heads, community leaders? Are we satisfied with the instruction that we're receiving right now? Are we in compromising settings? Make no mistake, if so, the Almighty Father will bring correction. He will either give us the strength and fortitude to cause us to walk away, or the strength and the power and might to be used to correct that pastor, leader, bishop, elder, as He direct us. It is written where it say, rebuke not an elder. Understand what that means, my brothers and sisters. We, in our own mind, don't go around rebuking elders. But He that is in us, He that is greater than us, gives us liberty as He directs. That liberty is His liberty to use whomever He see fit to bring correction and reproof. Beware of those who will defend their ego, their pride, their own hidden agendas, their own positions. Beware of those who put themselves up and think more highly of themselves than they should. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al. What are the leaders saying as it relates to food and water and preparation? What are the leaders saying in terms of if you're called to leave? The scriptures talk about sometimes just walking away, not taking anything, just walk away with the clothes on your back. For there are those, the scriptures also talk about, that are prepared. And believe it or not, there are those who will share supplies and resources with those that do not. We must trust and believe like never before, O Yashar'al. We must begin to consider discussing, adapting, and adjusting our eating habits, our drinking habits, our fellowship habits among one another. These are the instructions that should be going forward, preparing to adapt. You see, when priority kicks in, my brothers and sisters, the soft drinks, the beverages will take second or back seat, should I say, to fresh water in itself. Fresh water in itself. There are plants that we can get water out of. These are the discussions we must begin to be mindful of. And trust that the Almighty Father will provide for us. So I'm not saying this to get you to worry. I'm saying this to get us to have keen senses, spiritually so, mentally so, physically so, such that we begin to manage these earthen vessels so we're not betraying one another for a bottle of water or a morsel of food. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al. Make no mistake, end times are here. We are beyond shadows, types and shadows. My brothers and sisters, regarding food, more on food. There were circulating news feeds dispelling the food shortage. I mentioned that earlier. In other words, so don't let somebody say, we don't have a food shortage. I saw where they destroyed food that they say was supposed to be for restaurants and cafeterias and chefs. It's not a food shortage. Make no mistake. That's a narrative, my brothers and sisters. The food we saw destroyed, that wasn't enough food to feed all the hungry people on the planet. It was for select restaurants. And so they saying it wasn't a food shortage. As I said before, O Yashar'al, earlier in this recording, if the food don't reach the mouth, it's a food shortage. You see, it's time for us to understand the dynamics of the enemy trying to infuse confusion with conflicting messages. Look around, Yashar'al. The wildfires, the drought, the famine, the widespread locusts, the deforestation that we see going on, overpopulation where they've developed farmland. Look around, O Yashar'al, and then look at the population on the planet. We are at approximately 8 billion people on this planet. And so when you see famine, locusts, drought, wildfires, deforestation, do you really think it's not a food shortage? Don't believe the narrative that they're trying to spin, O Yashar'al. And if you look around, even with these meat processing plants that are closing, they say, oh, we got cows, we got the meat, we just can't get it to the people that need it. Make no mistake, Yashar'al, if you look around and start looking at these plants and manufacturing companies that are shutting down, and they're using the word COVID-19, coronavirus, as one of the major reasons. If you look around and research these narratives that are being spun to us, somewhere you'll see the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, Health and Human Services, the government being involved. If you dig deep enough, you'll find in some cases the government have stockpiled food and seeds. In some cases, some places they have even stopped selling seeds that are non-GMO. My brothers and sisters, examine these messages carefully, for as farmers were destroying food, it did not reach those in need, so therefore it was and is a food shortage. In other words, if it didn't reach the hungry, famine still had its place. Beware of the confusion and contradictions. Let us begin to think about how often we eat, how much we eat, and what we eat as the coming days become intense. Yashar'al, watch. Who begins to control our food supplies? Right now, I say to you, my brothers and sisters, prepare to adapt and adjust to living guidance. Beware, for preparations for slavery have begun. We will either be a slave to Yahuah or a slave to the world leader. If we seeking to save our own life because of food, physical food, we will lose it. We will lose that battle, O Yashar'al. But if we seek to lose our life for Yahusha's sake, we will recognize that we have life everlasting far beyond these earthen vessels. Slavery. And I'm talking about slavery no matter what skin color. I'm talking about the slavery where the government will say you can't buy or sell without the mark of the beast. The slavery that said you can't do anything without abiding by the rules and laws that are set forth and emerging in this one world system that is soon to come together like we've never seen it before. My brothers and sisters, remember Genesis 47 chapter. They were willing to sell themselves. Are we not aware that the scriptures talked about bringing division? Even about those in your households will be your enemy? I don't want to skip over an update for this COVID-19, my brothers and sisters, the coronavirus. As of 8:03 p.m. in the Gregorian date of 4/16/2020, worldwide reported total infected 2,180,003. Number of deaths reported 145,417. That's worldwide. In the U.S. alone, and the totals I gave included the U.S., but the U.S. alone have reported as of 8:03 p.m., according to the worldometer.info, 677,056 people infected with 34,580 deaths. And there are many deaths that are being discovered that were not reported through the chain of communication. There's no known cure for this virus, O Yashar'al. From a man's perspective, we know that the Almighty Father, Yahuah, is that cure. The numbers are adding up, and it will prove to bring extreme humbling times. The time is now to discern true chosen leaders and begin to prepare together, O Yashar'al. I say to you again, there will be a final exodus. Just as Isaiah 11:12 says, and he shall raise a banner for the nations and gather the outcasts of Yashar'al and assemble the dispersed of Yehudah from the four corners of the earth. My brothers and sisters, this widespread virus is a contributor to food distribution breakdowns. Because of this disease, and it's ramping up, and soon and very soon we will realize that we should not take the judgment of the Almighty Father likely. We who are set apart should receive this as discipline. We should be on our knees. We should be crying out. We should be seeking to discern what the Most High Father Yahuwah is saying to us in Yahusha's name. What say you, O Yashar'al? Are we going to wait till we're completely out of any resources or supplies before we begin to start coming together? Yes, the government have us on lockdown, and we can use that as a convenience for not coming together. Or we can at least begin to communicate vis-a-vis the various technological venues that we have and start talking about what we have stored, what we have to contribute, what we if we don't have, just say, I don't have it. And we will hear some brothers and sisters say, I got you. I have enough for both of us. We will learn to adapt and adjust, my brothers and sisters. Let us be wise, Yashar'al. There is no return the way things were before COVID-19. There's no return from the judgment and discipline that have begun. It's real. Let's begin to vet one another. Let's begin to have the discussion. Let's begin to have real, meaningful discussion and demonstrate obedience to the Almighty Father. Even across the spectrum of the media platforms such as YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook, and others, Pile Talk, and what have you, BitChute, I think I'm saying it right. But even across the spectrum, we're spending more time talking about what those outside the inner court are doing. We're busy talking about what the wicked ones are doing. We're busy talking about what people are doing as it relates to this COVID-19. Let's begin to get to know one another. That same questioning you would have for someone that you want to marry, male or female. That same question you would want to have to know that that person you're coming close to, that shepherd, that morer, that teacher, that community lead, will watch over you as they are strengthened by the Almighty Father in Yahusha's name, that your children are safe, that you are safe. It's time, O Yashar'al, to begin to identify the sincere, the chosen, the obedient, the pursuers of the will of the Almighty Father. Yashar'al, my brothers and sisters, our ability to avoid enslavement, it comes out of discernment and obedience. In other words, as time gets really rough, if times ramp up, O Yashar'al, when we can discern the Spirit of Yahuwah working in us, through us, one towards another, in Yahusha's name, as it is written, we can discern what the Spirit of Yahusha is saying to us and obey Him. This will help us avoid enslavement, becoming slaves to those who control the practical water, fresh water, and food. Out of discernment or obedience, we will see times we will speak to a rock or a tree and water will flow out of it, fresh water, to fulfill the need to satisfy our thirst. Just as the Most High sent quail and provided food for the children of Yashar'al in days of old, we will have what's necessary to fulfill end-time prophecies and promises by the Almighty Father. We will know what takes priority. We will learn how to ration. We will come away from our gluttonous behavior. We'll come away from thinking we have to eat 3 meals a day. We will grow to know the power and might of Deuteronomy 8:3, knowing that man doesn't live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the Almighty Father. And His word that proceeds out of His mouth will sometimes be echoed through us one towards another, and sometimes be echoed through us to tell the tree, the rock, the stream to come before us to satisfy our thirst, to bring the fish to satisfy the food, if we are individuals who eat fish, clean fish, as described in the scriptures, my brothers and sisters, in Leviticus. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al. Many of us, we spoke about our beliefs. We talk about scriptures. We talk about others. We point fingers at everything but what we're supposed to be doing. This will soon change. You see, there's the call of the 144,000 in great multitude as mentioned in Revelation 7 chapter. There's the call from the Almighty Father to get serious, to listen to him, to see that he is indeed working through his chosen ones to bring about order and unity for a set-apart nation. Listen carefully, Yashar'al. Fresh water, food, these will prove to be the new currency. Gold and silver will not. Bitcoins will not. Fresh water and food. And regarding slavery, let us learn to be mindful of what is written in the scriptures about presenting our bodies as a living sacrifice, a living offering, as it is written. Let us be mindful of the need to be a slave to the Almighty Father Yahuah and witness him working in us, through us, yielding to him. Or otherwise, we will find ourselves as slaves to the wicked one. Are we not aware that it is even written that a brother or sister can be delivered to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved? But make no mistake, when the mark of the beast comes, anyone who takes that mark is not, absolutely not, a part of the inner court, absolutely not a part of the set-apart children of Yashar'al. They may be Hebrew, but not all Hebrews are of the Hebrews that are set apart, are of the Abraham, the chosen children of Yahuah. And make no mistake, Hebrews and Gentiles will come together as one, made possible by Yahusha Mashyach. We must not ignore our nationality, and we must not ignore that the time will come where that is not the priority. You see, the nationalities are important in order to fulfill scriptures. Otherwise, how can you say he brought Jews and Gentiles or Hebrews and Gentiles together if we ignored the nationalities? So we must ignore. I believe in the coming days, O Yashar'al, the world leaders will and must acknowledge who the true Hebrews are, the true Abraham of the Almighty Father Yahuah. And I believe that those who disregard us as the chosen will witness the world leaders acknowledge us and witness what happens to the obedient ones of Yahuah in the coming days. Yashar'al, O Yashar'al, intense times are before us. I cannot stress enough the importance of asking questions, vetting, seeking to discern. I believe those in the Western Hemisphere will gather in the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia. I believe there will be a gathering before we begin to move away from the Western Hemisphere and to the Promised Land, with the destination, the true Mount Sinai, as the core central point, the set-apart mountain of Yahuah, which is commonly known right now as Jabal al-Lawz, situated in the northwest quadrant of Saudi Arabia. There will be some chosen leaders that will echo the words from the Almighty Father. You see, Hashatan, Satan, knows that the fullness of his pawn, the anti-Messiah, cannot come to be until that which is restrained, which are those mentioned in the scriptures. Us, O Yashar'al. those for the esteem of the Almighty Father that will fulfill the final exodus. Yes, there will be those left behind for varying reasons. But do not despair. Do not lose your belief and trust in the Almighty Father. Hold on, O Yashar'al. Gird up. The battle is about to get intense. For our redemption draws nigh. And soon and very soon, we will see the two witnesses of Revelation emerge. And we will see the days approaching for the physical return of Yahusha Mashyach. On that note, O Yashar'al, start discussing how to begin rationing what you have, changing eating habits now. Identify those who would try to be fast talkers and sneak and shove stuff in their mouth when you've agreed on certain food rations. It's getting ready to get rough, O Yashar'al. This is not to worry you or to make you be fearful of man, but it is to get you to be fearful and pause and pray and discern and look up before the Almighty Father, fearing Him so that you can gain the knowledge of what's to be done. Are we not aware of Proverbs 1:7 saying the fear of Yahuah is the beginning of knowledge? Fools despise discipline, wisdom and discipline. Yashar'al. My brothers and sisters, me personally, I know of no other direction to turn. I reach out to you as I am directed. I ask for your help to subscribe and share if these words remotely draw you closer to the Most High. Am I disappointed? Yeah, but I know it's not about me. Isaiah 55:11 gives me the confidence to know that when the Spirit of Yahuah is working in us, through us, one towards another, that His word will not return to Him void nor empty. It's going to do what it set out to do. And that's where my comfort comes. I would be lying saying I'm not disappointed. But my comfort comes in knowing that if I am walking in obedience to Him, His words will reach the ears of those it is designed to reach. The time is coming, O Yashar'al, where there are those among us who have words from the Almighty Father. There are those among us who are providing instructions, warnings, guidance. The time will come where we may be scarce, or we may be moved into a position of executing judgment, a judgment that you may not like, except for those who understand the judgment that begins at the house of the Most High is a necessity for fulfilling what is written. On that note, I say to you, Yashar'al, I salute your patience, your tolerance, your zeal and desire to do the will of the Almighty Father. I pray that you grow in discernment and that we grow in discernment and that we learn how to respond with correctness, with accuracy, how to love, how to protect, how to guard, how to execute the things that the Almighty Father would have. On that note, I say to you, my brother, my sister, Shalum.